Welcome to the Feed Podcast. I'm Michaela Scott.
I'm Alexis Edwards.
And I'm Isabella Ubilis.
Today, we're looking at wildlife management decisions on Oak Lane, where Virginia Tech housing is trapping and euthanizing groundhogs due to an ongoing burrowing activity. According to the university, the goal is to reduce safety risks like sidewalk damages, structural damages, and safely get them out of the area. So, right now, Virginia Tech Housing says this isn't really a nuanced issue. Groundhogs are burrowing animals, so they can obviously weaken the soil stability. They can create trip hazards for students walking up Oak Lane, getting to their housing. And so let's talk about it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a few facts to go along with that. Their burrows can be up to 45 feet long, which is honestly, I didn't expect that, and up to 5 feet deep. So obviously it can cause some structural issues if they're burrowing near, the complexes. And also, other animals, like foxes and stuff, also use their burrows. So not only is this, relocation effort or extermination effort impacting the groundhogs, but it's also impacting the other animals, but also, in all, negatively affecting Oak Lane.
Right. Mm-hmm. I know you lived on Oak Lane. Did you see any last year when you were there?
We did have one groundhog that was around pretty often, and I won't lie, he did burrow quite a bit around the house. So yeah, it could be tripping safety hazards as far as, with girls walking around and, especially keeping up with the grass and the maintenance. It can be a nuisance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially here in Blacksburg, because all of the houses here and things are a lot older, the damage that they can do is a lot more compared to in other areas where there's a better, infrastructure.
Yeah, so I know we talked about the housing notice that Virginia Tech sent out. Did you have some notes on that?
Mm-hmm, yeah, so actually, in the housing notice, the university said that the trapping program specifically to trap the groundhogs and euthanize them, it addresses that it's ongoing and significant groundhog activity that can impact both the safety and facilities. And it also notes that these burrows can actually cause damage to not only the sidewalks, but also the buildings that are around in that area as well.
Yeah, I mean, with old structures like the houses on Oak Lane, I know my old sorority house up there. It's pretty old, so I bet that's a major issue. And the university also stated in the housing notice that it's being done by a licensed critter vendor. And so, a lot of students, however, they're of course worried about the public safety concerns that are brought up with these burrowing of groundhogs, but a lot of individuals are worried more about the animal welfare. They're, wondering, why can't we just relocate the groundhogs?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where a lot of student concern comes in. I mean, even though relocation sounds better, it's just not as ideal, because when you relocate them to a different place, they don't know where they are, and ultimately it affects the animal even worse than it would be just exterminating.
100%. I mean, I know that relocating any animal, they're definitely going to be confused. They're definitely going to be unfamiliar with the environment that they're put in. And so while students are concerned, I know there was also a petition going around.
Yes, there was a petition started, I think, by somebody that does live on Oak Lane trying to stop the euthanization program, but also that comes with a lot of, misinformation of the students not actually knowing, it's actually better for these groundhogs to be euthanized rather than relocating them to somewhere where they could be causing more damage. And actually, like you said, it's more harmful to actually relocate them because they're in a area that they're not familiar with. They could be roaming around and then eventually just get hit by a car or something like that.
I mean, yeah, it really comes down to public safety concerns versus animal welfare. And so to better understand how these decisions are really handled in real practice every day, we actually spoke with a local critter control professional. His name is Andy Sizer with experience in wildlife management. Let's take a look.
So how common would you say are groundhog issues in this area in Virginia, like southwestern Virginia?
Pretty common. I mean, we're trapping maybe 100 a year or something like that. 50 to 100.
Speaking of kind of the what they can cause around these buildings, specifically in Virginia Tech, but also in urban areas. what kind of damage do you can groundhogs actually cause around buildings and sidewalks when they burrow?
You know, damage that they can do. They're not going to make your modern house fall down. Now, some of these ratchet older construction, yeah, they might could undermine the foundation and make them sag or do something weird. But in a modern house, groundhogs are not going to make it fall down. But they are rodents, and the thing to remember is if they can get under any part of a house, they will chew on wires. They will pull down insulation. A lot of times we see where they'll get trash and anything that they can use. Like in nature, they'd be looking for a giant leaf, like a burdock leaf or something like that, to go carry down into to where they're going to sleep and make their bed out of it. But here we see them take pool covers and things like that, and sometimes insulation, sometimes anything that's like fabric or that you could fold up and make a bed out of. They'll come and get it. So if that's your bottom of your house, your insulation, your wiring, that's not a great thing.
So in this scenario, Virginia Tech, they're trying to hire someone to euthanize the groundhogs instead of
Mhm.
locating them. And so
Yes.
why is it that relocation isn't recommended and euthanization is like the only option in this scenario?
According to state law, yes, that's the only legal. What you can't take an animal and drop it off somewhere else, and there's a few reasons for that. I wouldn't say that I necessarily across the board agree with that. I am handicapped by having to follow the laws, so I have to do what the laws say.
If you were explaining the situation to someone who are concerned about the groundhog situation and euthanizing them on Oak Lane, what would you want them to understand?
It could very well, based on a lot of factors, it could very well be more humane for them to be humanely euthanized by a wildlife control technician than to be carted to some forest area that they're unfamiliar with and turned loose to wander around until a bobcat or a coyote finds them. So that's kind or they starve to death or get hit in the road trying to make it home or anything like that. So it's not that this is good, but it could be in fact less bad
Mhm.
for them if it is deemed pertinent to remove them from the place that they currently live.
So, as we learned from Andy, in large scale infestations of these groundhogs, professionals often say relocation is not accurate. It's just going to fail for the groundhogs. Like you said, they could get hit by cars. It can actually, create additional ecological survival issues. My favorite thing that he said was, the example of imagine taking a human and bringing them from Blacksburg, Virginia. They grew up there. They were in that community. They built relationships, and then you pick them up and you take them to, another continent like East Asia. Like they wouldn't be like comfortable. They wouldn't know what they're doing. They wouldn't know how to survive when they're just picked up and thrown in some other location. And I think that was a really great, representation of what this looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also read that when it's relocation efforts, it comes to a territorial issue with other animals and other groundhogs. Once they, have their territory and they've established it theirs, it leads to fights. And ultimately, it's just killing off both of them. Also, the dangers of like them not knowing the area. So then, like you said, they could get hit by a car or, end up in a place they're not supposed to be.
Right, definitely. I mean, I know that Andy was discussing, they tried in one study to bring groundhogs into another area, and even if they were lucky enough to find a burrow, there would be a groundhog already in there, and there would be a massive fight, which, will end in a terrible death for the groundhog.
And not only that, not only is euthanasia a better, it's required by state law, pretty much is what he said. He can't really do much other than euthanize them according to the law, but also a lot of concerns are with diseases that they could be bringing. So relocating them to an area where, let's say this groundhog has rabies and it's not known and they relocate it to another area, and that disease eventually does spread. So a lot of the concern is with the disease that can spread with relocation of those groundhogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, I think especially more than anything, it's their mating season. So in the spring, early spring, so probably right about now, after they wake up, females will usually have 2 to 6 babies.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
I mean, you can kind of understand with the amount of groundhogs that are living on Oak Lane, how fast the reproduction will be, ultimately just making the issue worse. So,
And not only that, he did mention that in another instance that these groundhogs were out in the parking lots and actually chewing, like going up into people's cars and then like preventing them from starting when people would go back into their cars eventually. And obviously, I don't think people want that because obviously Oak Lane is a huge residential community here on campus, and obviously there's a lot of cars there that if eventually these groundhogs do keep repopulating in that area, they could eventually move into that parking lot and cause more damage.
yeah, absolutely.
What would you guys do if you jumped into your car and saw a groundhog?
I have no idea. I would want to like pet it, but then again, it's a wild animal, so
Right.
I'm not sure how I would react in that situation.
Yeah. So, as we learned today, euthanization is standard practice. And I think, even though students are reacting and responding very emotionally to the idea of euthanizing, they're, doing this in the most humane way possible, which is, I think what we've really learned today.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is the Newsfeed podcast. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.